still filing in, we will get started because we have a lot to do. And I got a newscast at 10 o'clock that I'd like to get back to. We are so happy that you are all here tonight for this community conversation on a very important topic. The organizers thought tonight it would be appropriate to begin, like our students begin every day, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Safe to say, no two words have stirred as much debate and emotion as the Common Core. Tonight we are here to educate ourselves. One of the main goals of the Common Core was to develop a common core of standards that are internationally benchmarked, aligned with work and post-secondary education expectations, and inclusive of the higher order skills that students today need. Of it, the National Association of State Boards of Education said the release of the Common Core standards will help guarantee that the same high standards and opportunities for achievement are expected of every student in all parts of the country. And for the first time, we will have one set of standards. When every child, they said, is able to compete on a level playing field, the chance for every child to succeed is inherently elevated. There are many opinions on this. To help us learn more, we have a very distinguished panel of local educators. I'm going to introduce them now, beginning with Jody Siegel, the Executive Director of the Monroe County School Boards Association. Jody will be retiring as Executive Director in July, but during her tenure, she has led the 21 District Association, which provides training information to school board members and superintendents during years of major changes to public education. Welcome, Jody. Alfonsi Eckler. Stand, there you go, is from Webster, an RIT grad. She runs a travel agency that's been in her family for 36 years. She's a mom of two, both with learning differences. She realized early on, she says, how Common Core would adversely affect her children's education and all students with special needs. This drove her into her second job as a dedicated, informed, and active member of the anti-Common Core movement. Jolene DeBrango. Jolene, give us a wave. Has been a teacher since 1992. She holds 3 teaching certifications and has taught elementary, middle, and high school students. Through her over 20-year career, she taught in Ontario, Wayne, and Monroe counties, as well as Nazareth College. In 2011, she was elected as the president of the Pittsburgh District Teachers Association, and in 2014, elected as the vice president of the Monroe County Federation of Teachers. Howard Mafucci. Is a former Pittsburgh social studies teacher, football and ice hockey coach, assistant principal in Gates Chili, high school principal, and superintendent of schools in East Rochester, passionate about public education. He is currently a negotiator for the School Administrators Association and an education reform analyst. He believes education is the great equalizer of our public education system. Dr. David Hirsch. Before earning his PhD and becoming a professor, David was an elementary classroom teacher for 8 years. Now, as a professor, he teaches, writes, and speaks on the policies of high-stakes testing in education. His new book, coming out in the fall, is The End of Public Schools, the Corporate Reform Agenda to Privatization of Education. Bill Calla has been in public education all of his adult life. Fans in the room. He has served as a teacher and administrator in suburban, urban, and rural settings. He has dedicated his life to children not only in the country, but to thousands of the poorest in the world and Africa as well. He has spent the past 20 years creating school environments that are child-centered, based on the premise that all children have unique gifts and that the role of education is to discover those gifts. John Baines. High school English since 1976. His area of specialization is literacy and college readiness, teaching reading, speaking, and writing to 16 and 18-year-old students. He believes that the primary role of public education is to equip American citizens with the skills to fully participate in our democracy. He has been a leader of the Fairport Teachers for over 20 years, and he and his wife are the parents of 4 children. And now, Teddy Irolier. Last but not least, is a teacher in the Rochester City School District. She has been there since 1978, when she graduated from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Her experience gives her a very expansive view of educational reform today. She believes that the Common Core race to the top and the high-stakes testing are part of a manufactured crisis caused by manipulated data. As you can see, we've got a lot to talk about with our panel of experts tonight. We thank you all for being here. We have a finite amount of time, but no doubt endless questions. Our effort is going to be to get to all of your questions and have suitable time for the answers as well. We're going to start by inviting Dr. Hirsch and Mr. Baines up for a brief statement about their experiences in education. Dr. Hirsch.
The introduction, and thank you all for coming. This is a really important event, and it's really you who are going to make the difference. We have a crisis in education, but the crisis may not be the one you think it is. Governor Cuomo and others claim that our schools and teachers are failing, and that we've thrown enough money at schools without positive results. Therefore, we need not fully restore the cuts in state funding that occurred during the recession, nor respond to the court-ordered funding increase resulting from the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit. Instead, Cuomo and the Commissioner and the Chancellor claim that the way to improve schools is not by providing adequate funding or supporting teachers to develop and implement curriculum appropriate to the interests of children, to the interests and abilities of their students. No, Cuomo and others claim that schools will improve if we make standardized test scores central to evaluating students and teachers. I fundamentally disagree with this. But before talking about the Common Core, state standards, curriculum, and standardized tests, let me make 2 points. First, I'm not against standards. In fact, I would argue that the Common Core standards are too low. As an elementary school teacher, I worked with students to research and write a public television program on urban renewal and suburban sprawl. I've also worked with 5th grade students at a local school district in Rochester to research the illnesses associated with pet waste, their favorite topic, and how to reduce our health risks. The project culminated in students creating videos, websites, and brochures to educate parents, students, and teachers. Again, this is 5th graders. Second, I am not against standardized exams. Rather, I am against using standardized exams to make high-stakes decisions about students and teachers. In this instance, Kathleen Cashin and the American Educational Research Association and the National Academy of Education, among many organizations, agree with me that student tests should not be used to evaluate individual teachers. Yet the budget proposed by Governor Cuomo, passed by the legislature, signed into law, states that half of a teacher's evaluation will be based on the value-added measure of student scores. Furthermore, the student scores will be weighted so that if the students as a group score either a 1 or 2, ineffective or developing, then the teacher cannot be rated as a 3 or 4, effective or very effective. Therefore, in reality, the student scores do not count as 50% of the teacher's evaluation, it counts as 100%. Not only are teachers and students turned into numbers, but so is learning. Learning is increasingly reduced to reading a paragraph and then answering multiple choice questions. Students no longer focus on what they learned from an activity, but instead on their scores. I heard the other day about a student who read a paragraph and then wanted to know where was the multiple choice questions. Sometimes we read things without multiple choice questions, especially when they're adults. Reducing students and teachers to numbers obscures our understanding of one another as people. Research on successful schools tells us that the key to student success is students knowing that teachers care about them. Not only does the Common Core state standards transform the purposes of schooling, it is also used to attack public education. Cuomo exclaims that because only slightly more than 30% of students achieve proficiency on the exams, yet most teachers are rated as effective or very effective, that the teacher ratings were, quote, not real, and therefore, he said, baloney. But the problem is that the previous Commissioner of Education, John King, set the cut scores on the exams so low as to yield precisely such a low, so high as to yield precisely such a low passing rate. Therefore, Cuomo was right, the scores are baloney. But it's not the teacher evaluations that are baloney, but the student scores. Our students are doing better than what they say. And according to recent polls, most parents realize that Cuomo and the state education department are producing a manufactured crisis. Unfortunately, a manufactured crisis has real effects. The emphasis on standardized curriculum and test scores has substantially decreased teaching morale. Good teachers are resigning or retiring. And the excellent university students we hope would consider teaching as a career are saying, no thank you. Over the last 5 years, enrollments in local university teacher education programs have decreased 30 to 75%. And I was just talking to Bill Caller just before coming up here, and it's much worse than that, based on just counting the number of students in the Warner School of Education and in other local colleges. We're really being decimated, because nobody wants to do this anymore. The students in my classes are still as smart, creative, caring, and talented as I would hope. There are just fewer of them. But I fear that soon we will not only have fewer teacher education students, but also few of the quality we need for excellent schools. So what are the alternatives to emphasizing test scores? We know from looking at successful countries like Finland that what counts is creating a culture that trusts and supports teachers to develop and implement curriculum based on standards created by professional educators and assessing teachers and students through multiple measures. Instead, Cuomo attacks teachers as only caring about their paycheck and not wanting evaluations. If teachers only wanted a paycheck, there are easier ways to earn a living. New York is, I fear, in the process of destroying its public schools. We mistake test scores for learning and numbers for people. My hope is that parents, teachers, students, and the public will work together to ensure that public schools remain the center of the community and promote the kind of teaching and learning that prepares students to be creative, critical, and caring democratic citizens. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be a time miser tonight. I apologize. We're trying to keep the opening remarks to 4 minutes. Thank you very much, Dr. Hirsch. I didn't mean to rush you through that. But we're trying to keep things moving, and I've got the unfortunate job to do that tonight.
I hope Jenny doesn't have a hook. Wow, what a turnout. Thank you for being here. You know, I've been teaching for 39 years, and it is true that people are frustrated and disappointed with the situation, but I want you to know this, that many teachers are not going to be pushed out. I'm going to keep teaching. I love it. The teachers in this community love it, and we're going to keep doing it, and we're not going to get, and I'm not trying to contradict your point, I think your point's very valid, that especially in those early years, those first 5 years of teaching school, are extremely, extremely difficult to deal with. Some of the challenges as you're developing your repertoire of skills. Those are our most at-risk teachers. We need to grow them. Professor Hirsch couldn't be more correct, but just in case anybody gets the idea that it's all doom and gloom, I'm going to be with my kids tomorrow morning, and that's what gets me up every day. I want to talk about parents, and I want to talk to all of you who are parents, and that is that we have one rule: the parent is never wrong. Kind of sounds like Wegmans, I know, but the parent is never wrong. Whatever decision you make, and I know many of you are here discerning your decision around refusing tests that are administered in grades 3 through 8. Whatever decision you make is the right decision, because no one, no institution, no individual understands your child, knows your child, or advocates for your child the way you do. And when you make a decision in the best interest of your child, it's the right decision. I have some opinions, but I'm not here to tell you how to think. So let me share a quick overview of, it'll be a little bit overlap with Professor Hirsch. NCLB, No Child Left Behind, started the 3 through 8 testing regimen. The concept behind it was, and I understand it, there are kids attending schools in this country, and the schools maybe aren't very good, but how do we know? We don't have any standard measure to judge schools. So in they bring these tests. The main goal is to evaluate the quality of schools. That was kind of the concept. And what's happened here in New York State, and these tests have been around a long time, well before the Common Core, is that over time, we found out that the administration of the tests has been really problematic. Tests haven't been reliable. SED has struggled. How many of you have heard about the botched rollout of the Common Core? Well, that was preceded by the botched rollout of the 3 through 8 testing. Part of the problem is that the students are preparing for the test with their teachers in grades 3 through 8, and the tests are only in math and in literacy, ELA, English Language Arts. Well, there's so much more to education than that, and that's, as a result, there's a narrowing of the curriculum as teachers begin to focus on these exams. The students then take the exams in April, and the exam results come in the summer. And when the exam results show up, the student has moved on to the summer and to the next teacher. The state takes the performance of the student and puts it into 4 categories, 4 buckets: a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. Some of you guys know this, but I'm trying to make sure we kind of have a base of understanding of what we're talking about here with these tests. It's tested, it's done on a bell curve, so the students are scrunched into the 2-3 zone. So most of the students will be in the 2-3 zone as you have your bell curve as a result of the way it's scored. This parent then, and I'm thinking about you as parents, you receive a result that your child is a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. That's what you get after all of this effort. The teacher never sees the exam that the child took, nor is the teacher any teacher able to talk about the exams which are created by a private company. They're not allowed to talk about them. It's the gag order. You've probably heard about it. So this has created a major problem. And then secondly, we've had an issue around the manipulation of the data which creates the manufactured crisis. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the high school exams too, but Jenny, I see you out of the corner. I was a point guard in high school. I got pretty good peripheral vision, so I need about 90 seconds to try to whip through the rest of this. So, but what happens with the 3 through 8 data is they take the results and then the state sets the cut scores, or what is proficient or not proficient after the fact. And this is why we've had students in New York, their portrait of their performance has gyrated wildly. At one time, 70% of the students were proficient. Lo and behold, a year later, 30% of them were proficient. This is also true with secondary exams, like I teach 11th grade, the old Regents exam. One year we had at Fairport High School 500 students. We had 2 students with a 98, a 99, or 100. They changed around the rubric and the scale, same basic test. the next year at Fairport High School, we had 100 students score a 100. One of my teachers that I work for and with taught 40 students in algebra last year. Each and every one of them had a 1 or a 2 on the 8th grade math exam. But when they took the algebra exam, passing of the algebra exam is a 34%. So above 34% is a passing score. So all 40 of these children who'd had a 1 or a 2 and were considered non-proficient ended up passing the high school exam. The reason for that is they can't manipulate the data in high school, because if they were to manipulate those high school results, thousands and thousands of children would not graduate from high school. So they manipulate them in the other direction. And I think we have a major issue with the credibility of state ed and the way they do testing, and I can see you right there, so I'm almost done. Let me just explain this growth score thing at one more point. The growth score works this way. The only teachers who receive a growth score are teachers of record in grades 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. In order to get a growth score, there has to be a pretest. So the pretest is the test from the year before. So the 3rd grade kids can't get one. The 3rd grade teachers can't get one because there's no test from the year before. So only 30% of the teachers in New York State, approximately, are teachers of record in grades 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And somehow we're going to have their results be the results of all 100%. So there's a huge problem right there with that. And then finally, one of the things that slays me about this is they don't seem to understand much about students. Now, you know a lot about them, you're living with them. And there's a big difference between a 3rd grader and an 8th grader. You give a 3rd grader a test, prepare that child for it, the child's very anxious, takes the test. By the time these kids are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they already know this test has nothing to do with them. There's no result that has any impact on them. And the results don't even come and produce them a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So as a result, they have no skin in the game. And nor should they. So as a result, the quality of the results as these children grow into adolescence and are taking exams that have no meaning to them, have no outcome for them, provide them with no value, because all assessments have one purpose, and I'm sorry, that's to help kids. They have one purpose, that's to help kids. And if the test doesn't help kids, what's the point? Thank you.
You know, John, if this was a basketball game, you'd be in serious overtime, all right? But I'll let it slide. As you can see, we can get easily diverted. We're going to try to stay on topic. This is your time. This is truly for you to get your questions answered. There's a microphone over there. We would ask, and here, please begin to stand up if you have a question. Specifically address it to one person, because we're going to have one person on the panel answer it. If one of you feels most comfortable answering it, please do. If we can have one person answer the question, we can get through more questions in a timely manner. So here you go. This is your turn. Does anyone have a question they would like to start with? Please stand up. And if you want to start standing over here as well, we'll try to go through these as quickly as we can. Hello.
Hello, my name is Vincent. I'm from Southern Tier down in near Hormel. Can't hear you. My name is Vincent. I'm from the Southern Tier, right around the Alfred area. Every Friday, my daughter hands me her work for the week that she's finished, and it's usually a 3 or 4 inch stack of papers, usually engaged New York paperwork, from math and ELA. I almost never see any papers pertaining to social studies or science. There's an occasional and feeble attempt to cover the topics through ELA. However, it's very infrequent. My question is, how prepared are these students going to be as they move through middle and high school, especially in these areas of science and social studies? Is there such a focus on test prep that we forego any other subject matter?
All right, thank you. Who would like to take that one? Preparations in high school. Oh, now they're shy?
It won't be. It's as simple as that. We've heard all kinds of comments about how the curriculum is getting narrowed. That's not myth, that's reality. I have seen schedules that look just, that the entire day is taken over by ELA and math. So if that's going to, you know, our job in school is to make good people, to make good citizens, and to tap the skills, to find the talents of the individual. And that misses it on all counts. So they won't be prepared.
All right, thank you. How about over here? If I could just address, I think this goes back to fair and equal funding for schools, for all schools, in that if you have a school district where they have not adopted the modules and where they have a robust curriculum, you will find that the teachers are able to teach all of the subjects and that you wouldn't see those types of worksheets coming home. So it kind of, all of this is kind of linked together, the funding, the testing, all of those types of things, but you will find in schools where they do have the money to create their own curriculum, and they're not just using the standards as the curriculum, those modules. You'll see a different type of education, which creates, what we're very concerned about as educators is that we believe that all kids should have the same type of education, and that their public education should be rich and robust no matter where they go. But with this way it's funded, it's not happening. All right, thank you. We're going to go over here now. Do you have a question?
I do. Our school district, which is Penfield, we've been told that there's gaps in the material, the curriculum that they have been given, and they fill in the gaps and see where the problems are. How do you feel that will affect how the kids taking the tests, because the building blocks per se are not in the tests themselves, but our school is adding them? How do you feel that the kids will do on the tests if they take them?
It really doesn't matter what, in my opinion, as a classroom teacher and having looked at a lot of information on the test, what curriculum it is that you're using. I know a lot of the suburban schools tend to think that not in my school, my kids are getting a great education. They're getting the science and they're getting the social studies and they're getting all the projects and things like that. However, the tests themselves are not going to represent what it is that you're doing in the classroom. And no matter what you're doing in the classroom, you're not going to get your students to really pass the test, because as John said, the cut scores for these tests are determined after the children have taken the test. So it's not like they're saying to the kids, you're taking a test, and if you score 60% of the questions correctly, you've passed the test, you're above 50. They determine what the passing score will be after the children have taken the tests. And the goal, they'll say ahead of time, we're going to find that your students are not as smart as you thought they were, and only 30% are going to pass. Lo and behold, the scores came out. 70% of New York State failed the test. In my district, in the city, 95% failed the test. The year before, 95% didn't fail the test. So there's games that are being played, and it doesn't really matter. You can have teachers that go in and shut the door and teach. However, that's not going to get them to pass the test any more than the teachers who go in their room and shut the door and try to teach to the test is going to get them to pass the test, because the tests are written and designed for the students to fail. That's why they've done it.
That's a strong statement. Does anyone want to add to that, or perhaps give their perspective to that?
Just talk? Right. Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put this into some kind of context. And the context goes like this. The entire reform movement, Common Core included, is based on a false premise. And that is that public schools are failing and American kids aren't competitive. What I would suggest you do is go to the National Center for Education Statistics and take a look at PISA, the Program for International Student Assessment. That's the international test that ExxonMobil uses to say we're 35th in the world. Well, we're 35th in the world when we look at the average. When you look at schools with less than 10% poverty, American students score at or near the top. So we're really being sold a bill of goods. American kids are very competitive in schools where there's very little poverty. The problem isn't our educational system, it's concentrated poverty, mostly in urban areas.
All right, thank you. I think we're over here now.
I'd like to further talk about what you were just speaking about in regards to the test itself. I also think, besides arguing the fact that we shouldn't be using teacher evaluations with this test, that the test itself is invalid. I guess, how many of you think that the test itself isn't a good assessment? Two quick questions. One is, I'd like to get your opinion on the removal of the local diploma in high school. I think with the changes in reform, we should be opening multiple pathways to graduation instead of lessening them. And also, I have twins that are sophomores in high school. One twin has a 96.4, one has a 96.5 average. They go back and forth. And I'm afraid for them to take the SAT next year, because that will be Common Core aligned. And again, I think the same thing may happen with what we see with the Common Core assessments, is that the SAT is going to be an inaccurate measure. So I wanted to get your opinion on that.
And let me talk a little bit about the SAT and the ACT. I've been a consultant preparing students for the SAT and the ACT for many, many years. A little history, the whole Common Core was hijacked by a group of people who set the whole deal up. And the fellow who runs the Acorn brand, the College Board, David Coleman, is the main author of the Common Core, and he is really the face of the franchise of the SAT. One of the things that's happened with, and this goes to your earlier part of your question. I'm trying to remember all the parts of your question. I'm getting elderly, so you might have to help me. But you know, one of the problems with the validity of the test is that if you look at these exams as college readiness, we could argue about what that is. And I think that the SAT and the ACT are pretty lousy exams for telling us how college ready people are. They really only have one purpose, and that's to predict your ability to read college textbooks. That's really, they have no content on them. So, but the problem is that when this guy came in and this new crew came in, they basically want everybody from grade 3, actually grade K through 12, to take a little piece of a college readiness exam. In other words, we're actually discussing under the influence of these people the college readiness of third graders. So the Common Core is designed to determine the college and career readiness of third graders, fourth graders, first graders. So the big problem, and Bill's better on this, and Professor Hirsch probably is better too, but the big problem with the Common Core is maybe not the end point where they're asking us to put kids when they're 18, before they go in the Marines, before they go to work, before they go to college. The problem is that it looks at younger children as mini adults, and that we're going to essentially treat them in third grade as if they're 1/3 of an 18-year-old. And we're going to use the same materials and expect the same outcome. It's like nobody involved in the Common Core understands anything about the developmental surges, whether you've read Piaget or not. So when we should be engendering a love of learning, a love of reading, a love of literacy, we have kids doing modules in third grade with common multiple choice answers to them. And I'm going to stop here, but that's part of what you asked about.
Thank you. We'll give you about 30 seconds, Dr. Callan and Jody. We want to get Jody in too.
Jenny, that's generally how it works. John takes 10 minutes and I take 30 seconds.
I won't go there.
I want to answer your question. Have your sons take the ACT. instead of the SAT. And one of the biggest prep mills in the country has pretty much looked at the beginning of the SAT rewrite, and who makes millions of dollars off of SAT prep, is said stay away from the SAT for 3 years. So take the ACT.
Good advice. Jody.
Just wanted to point out that colleges look at more than those scores. In fact, every college has its own way of calculating what a student's grade point average is differently from high schools, or many colleges do, and increasingly colleges are pulling away from regarding the SAT as an important measure, and many don't. So it's important to keep in context that while we're seeing the abuse of the use of test scores by government for other purposes, it doesn't necessarily mean that colleges are going to use it in the same way.
And there are over 850 colleges in this country that are SAT and ACT neutral, meaning you don't have to take them.
All right, thank you. Yes.
My question is for Jody Zeba. I would venture to say that most of the parents in this room have either decided to refuse the test for their students or are on the fence. And my question for you is, PTAs, school districts, NYSA, all these organizations are coming out supporting a parent's right to refuse. Why is the New York State School Boards Association continuing to perpetuate this lie to parents, telling them that it's illegal to do it?
First of all, I can't speak for New York State School Boards Association. I can only speak for Monroe County School Boards Association. I can tell you that it's very difficult for school board members who have to take an oath to obey state laws, to advocate. Right, but that has kept them from tending to go in that direction. There's a board, Kenmore Tonawanda near Buffalo, that is considering refusing to offer the test this year, and they've already been informed by the state education department that as soon as they take action to do that, the letters removing everyone from the board will be delivered. So the question then, no, but I want, I had a good friend once who worked for a president I didn't like. And I asked her how she could do that, and she said, who would you rather work for him, someone else or me? Because I knew her values and I knew what she was trying to accomplish. And I think for a school board, it's very difficult to be in the position. Most of them aren't saying it's illegal. Letters are going out from the districts, identifying that parents can do that and asking that they notify the schools. I can't speak for what every district's letter says, but certainly the districts are aware of that, and they're very concerned about certain aspects of it, because if, for instance, half the school shows up and is refusing to take the test, then what do you do with half the students on the day? Who's going to supervise them? What's going on? That's why they're asking to be notified if a parent wants to stay out so they can be prepared. But saying it's simply illegal, I think they're more typically saying that there are consequences, potentially.
Thank you.
Later on, I'll show you the letter that came out just the other day from the New York State School Boards
Oh, right, but I said I
Association.
can't speak for that. I'm not part of that organization.
All right, thank you. Sir?
My question is, I'm deeply concerned about the continued collection of large amounts of data from our students in the statewide longitudinal data system that was made possible by the amending of the FERPA Act. At what point do we as a community draw a line in the sand in terms of where, what, and to whom our children's information goes?
Can you elaborate on what FERPA is so that the audience might
I
understand?
believe it's a Family Educational Rights. It's a Privacy Act.
It's a privacy act for education, just like HIPAA is.
Right. Right.
Go ahead,
Well, I think the issue of we did kill as a state. We killed In Bloom, which was the attempt to get all of this data, but it's still alive and well from other aspects. Let me give you a very personal example that just happened this past week in Fairfield. There was apparently some grade fraud where grades were changed for faculty members and board members in Long Island. So what the controller did is said, no, we're going to respond to that, and we're going to do some checks, random checks of districts throughout the state to see if there's fraud. So randomly, Fairport was picked. Isn't that special? Well, what they did is they came in. First of all, when we first heard this, we went to our attorney and said, how does the controller, who is involved in finances, get to look at grades? Student grade, we couldn't quite see. So our attorney was really helpful. Said, well, it could go either way. Meaning no help whatsoever. So we pretty much felt that we weren't going to be able to fight this. Well, they sat down with us and told us what they were going to look at our grading procedures. Well, unbeknownst to us, they decided to go after individual children of board members and principals because they figured, well, that's where the fraud's going to take place. Of course, there was no evidence or no suspicion that this had ever happened. Instead of randomly looking at our grades without names, they specifically asked for the children of specific board members and principals, and then went after those grades to see if they had been changed, manipulated, massaged. And I'm telling you, I was on the phone with the ACLU today about this because I'm very.
It sounds like a good place to draw the line. Yeah.
As a parent with a child with an IEP, there's a lot of information that is on that document that basically can be shared with whoever the school district, New York State Ed, DOE wants to share that information with. So I think there's been some data breaches here in New York, haven't there? Out by Long Island, where children's data had been stolen, and parents were notified about a month later that their children's data had been stolen from the school district, whose data wasn't secure. These are the things that parents need to start to think about going forward, because this is part of the race to the top, which brought us Common Core.
And one thing that a lot of people, you go into the hospital and you sign those waivers that your minister can come in and pray with you if you need it, or anything like that in relationship to your health care, the HIPAA. Once your child's medical information becomes a part of their school record, it is no longer protected by HIPAA. It is now part of their educational record, and that information, because of the changes in 2011 to the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, is now available for any third party who expresses an interest or a need to know educationally for this. So the Gates Foundation can decide that they need information on your child, and they have access to that because perhaps they're providing computers to the district. Therefore, they have all that access. Your child's body mass index that they take in gym. Your child takes an at-risk survey in their health class in middle school. All of that information is now part of the public record. And as they said, it's not going up into the in bloom cloud anymore. In New York State, we were able to stop that. However, the requirement for it is still part of Race to the Top. It's part of the memorandum of understanding that the governor signed when they said they would take the money for Race to the Top. And it's being done right now, I believe, through the BOCES system. That information is out there. Don't think your kids' personal information is safe.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I am from Pittsburgh. I have two children, one with an IEP in 10th grade, one with a 504 in 7th grade. My first question is for the child in 10th grade. She has learning disabilities, dyslexia being one of them, received
reading instruction up through 8th grade. In 8th grade, they said, we are not going to provide it for her anymore, even though she tested at a 5th grade reading level. Starting in 4th grade, I got her private, I sent her to the Dyslexic Reading Center and private reading testing, reading instruction. In that time period, it was a 3-year period, she progressed 3 years of her reading level. When Pittsburgh said that they were no longer going to provide reading instruction, I said, how is this child? This is a bright child that has, wants to go on to college and has that ability. And I would like to know, I mean, and every one of her teachers at her CSE said the problem that keeps her back in each of the classes is her reading. Pittsburgh paid for her to have a private reading test by a PhD qualified doctor that also said yes, she is at 5th grade reading level with recommendations. Now I realize that they did not have to follow through with any of these recommendations, but my question is, what do I do for her to help prepare her to, I fear for the SAT college writing application. She has an issue with writing. I fear for her going out there, into the world having to read and write. I mean, now she has a computer that reads for her. She's got a Dragon Speak type thing that helps her, but those aren't available to everyone out in the reading world, depending.
So your question.
My question is, where do I go? Can any of the educators or the mom with the child with learning disabilities help?
I guess I'll take that. It's not an easy answer, unfortunately. New York State has not made it easy since they have not updated their list of modifications and accommodations for testing since 2006. So our children are therefore really set up to fail because they have no chance whatsoever in being able to pass any of the tests, Regents, ELA, math, no matter what it is.
Yeah, she's always scheduled at like the one on the ELA.
I will say to you, see me after, either myself or Rachel. We're working on that hopefully, but unfortunately, our children are, they take a chance of not even graduating with a diploma.
That's a great point that you make about possibly following up after the meeting if you have specific questions about your child. Thank you for that chance to say that as well.
Because I work in Pittsburgh, I'd be happy to talk to you after and just
you know my child.
Well, I don't want you to think that I'm not. I would love to talk to you afterwards.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
The second question is a quicker one, regarding the 7th grader. Okay.
See, that wasn't me telling you that. Thank you, though, and we do want to get to everyone's questions, so we will limit them to one. Yes, ma'am.
All right, this won't go down any further. All right, everybody is, I've been to a few of these, and we talk about the grades 3 through 8 Common Core state tests, and the kids can refuse them, and I have refused them for my children in the past. So what I specifically want to ask you about is the brick wall that my family hit, the one that we can't get past. And that is the Common Core Line Regents tests. Now last year when the Regents Algebra exam was given, the Common Core Regents Algebra, the passing rate on that, even with fudging the numbers, it was abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. And as you know, the Common Core Regents Algebra exam is going to be a requirement for a high school diploma. You can't get one without it. So, some people will say it's a poor rollout. I want to talk to you about my kid, okay? And I hope you don't think that I'm bragging. This is just my kid, okay? She took the SAT in 7th grade, okay? By the time she hit 9th grade algebra and the Regents algebra, she had 2 years of community college math under her belt. She took 9 classes. So if this was really a college readiness exam, she should have rocked that thing out of the park, okay? her grade in school was a 96 in algebra, and her score on the Common Core Regents exam was 69. I mean, my kid is in the high honors at Johns Hopkins ATY for math. If she can't pass this test, what chance do the rest of our kids have? And my question to you is, my kids are on this educational conveyor belt, okay? We don't get to stop time while everybody figures this thing out, okay? And in 4 years, some of you are still going to be school administrators. And you're going to have to tell 2 out of every 3 high school seniors, I'm sorry, but you can't have a diploma. How are we going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with that?
Well, I don't want to act like it's not going to be a crisis, but I don't believe that that's going to happen. And we have a tremendous amount of history with, and particularly with this test, of saber rattling about how it's higher standards, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, they did roll out that test, but there was also the old Regents as well.
Which she got a 96 on.
Exactly, she got a 96 on that. Now, how are they going to justify that? Are we going to have, you framed it, 30% of the students in New York State not graduate from high school because of these 2 exams that we're talking about, which is the new 11th grade English exam, or you're talking about the algebra exam. So I don't believe that's going to happen. However, your point is the critical point, and that is who gets damaged while they get their heads out of their elbows? What kids are in the middle of a bad bureaucratic decision around manipulating data, etc., as they are beating their breasts with their rigor talk? And so if you take a look, have you had a chance to see the new ELA English exam?
Oh, yeah.
So it's interesting, we were fooling around with it over at Fairport. I think that a grade is very similar. I hate your story, but I also think it teaches us a lot. If you take both exams, a grade on the current exam of about, maybe 89 would be about a 70 or a 68 on this new exam. So what are they really saying when they're manipulating results like that? And I think your question is very important. And I want to make a prior, sorry Bill, I'm going along again, but I want to go back to the prior question and the prior question, which is who draws the line in the sand? We have a rule in public education. I don't know if you parents know it. I'm not supposed to tell you. It's a secret. Here's the rule, all right? When one kid talks, that's equivalent to 50 parents. That's how powerful a kid. You ever heard a kid speak at a board meeting? Or had a kid tell his or her story? When one parent speaks, that's equivalent to 100 teachers.
My question is when?
Right,
Because
Jo-
my kid is growing.
Right, Jody wants to answer that.
I want to speak to the importance of directing activism here. I mean, this room is full of people, but none of us up here have the ability to direct how the state test is designed. However, the Board of Regents does. And we just saw the state legislature react to the angry public outrage across the state and appoint new regents, all of whom have, the new ones, a background in public education and experience that replaces people who didn't have that. And the members they kept were members who have been people who were asking questions in their recent appointments. The regents are the people who make these decisions. They've lived in an ivory tower for a very, very, very long time, pretty much until the past year. And even then, they kind of clung to the idea. They need to hear. I mean, we have 2 regents in our community, Andrew Brown and Wade Norwood, and stories like you're telling are things that they need to understand.
Why aren't they here? Why aren't they here? Were they invited?
Yes.
I think that sounds good, and I think that's good advice, but it'll never happen. They will not listen. I have been meeting with members of the Board of Regents for 20 years, and I don't think, at least with my agenda, that there's ever been an open year, ever. And again, I think the point to be made about how the changes came about, it was not by our complaining, not by educators complaining. The reason why we have new members of the Board of Regents was because parents went nuts.
Yes, we did.
Okay? But the pressure didn't come from pressure on the Board of Regents. The pressure came from the pressure on the legislature to say we want an open process. And that's how, right, and it still was a closed process, but at least we had, there's a sign that there's a different result. We really have to get to a point where talk just isn't working any longer. I mean, it's not as effective as we want it to be. So there have to be some stronger actions in order to get some movement. And we have to, I'm writing our legislators every day, and I get some pretty stupid responses back. I got to tell you, I got one today. I got one from the Joanne Simon in Brooklyn, who literally, her response to my letter was a dissatisfaction with her yes vote. I wrote to every single assembly person and every single senator. So all of you should, it'll mean more if it comes from you, okay? So I got, of course, all my automatic responses, okay, which said nothing, but I got one real response. I sent this letter out yesterday, and I get this response from this woman, and it was mind-numbing. This response pretty much said that we're so happy that we passed this budget because we distanced ourselves from Cuomo's agenda, and the teacher evaluation now has nothing to do with standardized tests. All right? And she goes on and on, and I responded to her, and basically I said, you're either in a coma or you're incompetent because you didn't read the bill. And that is exactly what happened. The legislators didn't read the bill, and they voted on it during the middle of the night. And I don't know if they had talking points that they followed, thinking that they were voting on something else, but that's irresponsible. So we have to vote them out. And my message
on that note, I may get my cane out. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. We spent a good deal amount of time. I hope we answered your question. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just one quick thing.
One more thing.
I think I agree with both Dr. Calla and Jody. I feel like we still need to fight, and I do believe that there's more power in numbers. So as much as I would like to encourage everyone in here to write the regents and talk to the chancellor and eventually whoever the commissioner is going to be, I think it's a stronger message when we're all on point, we have the same talking points, and it's parents, teachers, Board of Ed, higher ed, administrators, superintendents, all speaking with one voice with the same points, and we hammer it, and we hammer it, and we hammer it. I agree that they haven't listened so far, but if we stop now, they never will. They need to know we're not going to move.
I'm a parent of a third grade student who I recently decided to opt out of the state test. And my question is, although this is a larger issue, just in the immediate here and now, my son over break asked me for a sketchbook. I said, why? He's not an artist. So he would have something to do during the 6 days of testing, then he'll be sitting doing nothing. So is there anything, especially in Fairport, where there's going to be likely larger numbers of students opting out, what are your students doing for all of those days of not taking tests and sitting? Is there any way to combat that in the immediate here and now?
Well, for the over 700 who are opting out, we will have alternate locations. I think this is going to be the biggest reading fest that we've ever had. And one of the most important, I think you librarians will agree with that, wouldn't you? One of the most important things that we can do is instill a love of reading, and this is our opportunity to do that. And we'll also permit other work, but it won't be playtime. Although there's really importance to play in school.
Are is that good? Are you satisfied with that? All right, thank you.
I would just like to add one thing, and it pains me to say this, because as a former superintendent of schools, I am a compliance guy. I don't encourage people to break the rules. But the only way you're going to get the attention of people who are creating this madness is to say no.
That's right.
Hi there, my name is Shannon. I'm in the Fairport School District. My children will be refusing the Common Core state test, and I am concerned about the parents' role and the parents' voice in our schools today as exerted through school boards. And just here today, we heard mention of a school board in Buffalo where the state is threatening removing a democratically elected school board from office by the force of the state. Here in Rochester, East High had the same thing happen. They were deemed to be failing. Their school board was removed. My question is, how in danger are we as parents in directing the education of our children using our votes for school boards? Because it seems like our voices are not being heard, no matter how many times we go to Albany, no matter how many forums we go to, no matter how many thousands of parents go and talk to Commissioner King about how devastating these exams are in Common Core. The voice of the people is not being heard. And so are you worried about the parents' right to direct the education and upbringing of their children?
Dr. Hirsch?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to that by saying, and this would be a conversation I think we all need to have, is what else can we do besides writing letters? You know, I've advocated that in North Carolina they have a thing called Moral Mondays, and that we should, on the first Monday of each month, we should have a gathering in Rochester and everywhere else around the state to give our voice as parents and teachers, et cetera, to the legislators and to the regions that we disagree with what's going on. So we need to figure out other ways in which we can get our voice out there beyond what we're doing. And I don't think we know what's the best way to do this, because what we're doing now is not working. And we need to do something, because if you all write letters, other people don't know that you're all writing letters. So that's why we collectively gather 2,000 strong on a Monday.
What's really fun is to write the letters, and then know that your friends have written the letters as well, and their own letters, and slight variations on the question, and then to get back the responses that are totally unrelated to the questions that you asked in the letters. And you know right then and there that they're not even reading the letters. So there needs to be something else that's done. You need to keep writing, and the legislators are the ones that are controlling things. But you've got to do something else.
Well, maybe, I know that you care about the parents, and I know that you have connections with some of the politicians. And ask them, what are some of the ways that we can
Well, I know that
affect them?
what I've heard from parents, there's frustration with some of the superintendents and the boards. Like they're going to these meetings, they're talking to their school boards, and the school boards that are standing up are being attacked by the states. But it seems like so many of them are not hearing the parents, and I'm just really worried about our voice.
I think you have every right to be worried. By the Siena and the Quinnipiac polls, 70% of the state of New York disagreed with the legislation that was passed. So that pretty much says that we have no voice. So again, what's to be done as a result of that? And I think you have to start thinking of Rosa Parks. So
whose desk do I have to change my desk to?
All right, I'm going to give Jody 30 seconds to finish up this question, then we're going to go right over here.
Just because every board hasn't passed a resolution against offering tests doesn't mean school boards have been silent about this. There's been tremendous pushback towards the state education department and with legislators informing them of how laws that are being proposed and decisions that are being made are eroding local control and are doing things that will diminish the value of local education. It's a big issue. It's something that's very much on the mind of school leaders because we've been seeing this eroding of local control over time. And I think to the degree that the public speaks up and makes it clear in their conversations about how education should be organized, that they value local control, would serve as some sort of helpful counterpoint to that.
Excellent, thank you. Your turn.
Thank you.
My name is Dorothy. I'm from Webster. I have a 6th grader at Spry Middle School, and my test-loving son will be refusing the New York State ELA test this year.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
My 6th grader is not taking that test this year, the ELA test this year. He will be sitting for the Elder Regents to do that. I want to speak, my comment and question is to the quality of the standards, because the press keeps, reporter after journalist keeps repeating over and over again about the increased rigor, supposedly, how much harder these standards are, how they encourage our children to be critical thinkers. From what I can tell, we have been sold this idea that the ELA standards specifically are if it's a skills-based standards, that's what these are, as opposed to content-based standards. And as far as I can tell, this skill has boiled down to read this passage and answer these questions, and they're not all multiple choice, they're written response, extended response questions, using evidence from the text. I feel like I'm that guy in Princess Bride, talking about critical thinking. That word you keep using, it doesn't mean what you think it does, because how did critical thinking get boiled down to that skill and
Okay, so you want to make a statement?
Well, I guess I did make a statement. But this whole idea, and I love our teachers in Webster. I think my son is very blessed to have great educators. I think they try to go above and beyond these standards. Unfortunately, so much time is spent on read this, answer this using evidence from the text, read this, answer this using evidence, over and over again. I feel like he's getting cheated. And that isn't critical thinking. Who decided that that was critical thinking?
I'm not sure anyone on the panel could probably answer that, but if you want to give it a shot.
Let me just, quick answer for me. It doesn't matter what the standards say, because they can look, it's like you have a mission statement where you work. Is there a mission statement? Isn't it great? But what do you do? And tests really are the issue. The way we assess the kids are the issue. So we have these beautiful looking, some of them aren't that beautiful, but for the most part, they're pretty good looking standards. But the tests themselves are the issue. And that's what you're describing, what children are experiencing with the transmogrification, to use a fancy word, from something that isn't that unpleasant looking into something that's quite ugly, which is the test itself. And remember, what we test, we teach. And there's no, I don't care what anybody says, once there's a way of keeping score, this is America, once there's a way of keeping score, that becomes the dominant factor. And I think that that's why a lot of people have been sold, well, look at these standards, aren't they amazing? But look at the tests, if they'll let you, because by the way, there's a gag order and they're hidden and they're private.
All right, thank you. Sir, you've been waiting for a few minutes.
Hi, my name is David, and I'm from the Churchville Child High School District. I've always told my daughter, even if something is hard, you have to tackle it, and that's what these tests are. She's taken the test every year. We've told her, you're not allowed to opt out, because what does that teach them? When something's hard, you don't have to do it. But this year, for the first time, I'm questioning that judgment. I haven't decided whether she's going to take the test. My problem is, and my question to you, my problem is I'm about to use her as a political pawn, and I'm very upset about that. I shouldn't have to do that. So I want to know from you guys, is having us opt her out going to make a difference?
I want to ask you, I have here a cartoon and it's made the rounds. It's got the little test giver sitting at his desk. And there's a bird, there's a monkey, a penguin, an elephant, fish. I think there's a seal and maybe a dog here. And it says, in order for this to be a fair test, you're all going to have to do this. I'd like to see who can climb the tree the fastest. That's what you're asking your daughter to do when you're asking her to take this test, which is designed to make her fail.
By the way, I don't give her the grade.
Make her fail.
All right, but I think you bring up a really good point, and I think it's one parents are struggling with here tonight. And could someone answer that, Howie?
It's a shame that really this has become political, but it is political. The whole system is now political. These manipulated assessments, and they've been manipulated twice now, We were manipulated in 2010 under David Steiner, and now we're manipulated again. And it's all to create this, again, false premise that American schools are failing and our kids aren't competitive. And it's not true. So it's really getting into the political game to stop the political nonsense. And it does. It pains me to tell people, don't have your children take these tests, but it's really the only thing you have left. There's really nothing else to do.
How many parents of third graders do we have here? Do you know that one of the requirements this year is for your child to read 300 words in a minute? Can you do that? How many adults here can read 300 words in a minute? That's what they're asking third graders to do this year.
The test for the third grade has been written on a 7th, 8th, 9th grade level. Your 8-year-old children are being asked to read passages written on a 7th, 8th, or 9th grade level. Now, you might have a genius in your home who can do that. But think about the majority of the children that you know that are 8 years old. Can they read that? Can Flo's child with an IEP read that? These kids sit there and bang their heads on the desk. They cry. They throw up on the tests. They pull their hair out. There are kids who sit there and literally come out of tests with their eyelashes taken out. It is ridiculous to ask an 8-year-old to do something like this and then say that the child is the one who's failing. We're failing the children by making them take these tests. They're not reliable.
All right, good. Continue on the path of having you ask your questions.
All right, my name is Kim. I have 5 kids in the Pittsford district. I have a kindergartner who has an IEP. I have a 6th grader, 8th grader, 9th grader, and 11th grader.
You're a little busy.
I've been teaching in the city for over 8 years. I teach 1st grade now. I am not affected by the 3rd through 8th testing, obviously, but I have 21 kids, and I will be testing each one of them individually without the lovely pairs that the 1st grade teachers have in the city. I have to do all the testing on my own, and that's neither here nor there. My question is, my 3rd and 8th grader are affected by this. What is the actual repercussion if they don't take it? How are his teachers going to be graded on this? What happens if they don't take this?
Yeah, great question.
So one of the things that I think is important to say today, and I hope everyone hears this as parents too, is no matter this fight, this fight is ugly, but you need to do what you need to do for your own children, and no matter, and it was said at the beginning of this forum, no matter what you decide, it's not the wrong decision if it's your decision for your child. And I represent 800 members of the Pittsford District Teachers Association, and what I don't want you to do is to worry about the teachers. I want you to worry about the teachers. The association will not tell parents what to do, nor will we say what is right or what is wrong, because we do not believe that there is a wrong decision if it's the right decision for you and your family. So make it based on your child, not on, trying to save the world. We can still advocate in other ways, but you need to sleep at night knowing you did what's right for your kids.
I just have 2 other things for those that have high school kids. I just took my daughter to American University this past weekend. It's outside of DC. It's a D1 school. First thing she said, there is a little box you can check that says, I do not want my SAT and ACT scores counted. That finally the colleges are saying, hey, your GPA over 4 years is really what matters than what you do for 4 hours on a test. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sarah, and I'm a parent and a teacher at the worst performing school district in the state, the Rochester City School District, and I'm proud. Suburban communities for leading the way on the opt-out movement. You guys have been awesome. And my question is for anyone who wants to answer it. Howard said, I believe, Howard, you said, it's easy as saying no. It's not that easy in the city school district. No one is moving into my neighborhood for the school districts. Everyone's moving out to the suburbs. So my question is, in the city, as a parent, we're told, and as teachers, we're told that there are severe repercussions for if our students don't take the test, that priority schools will become failing schools, focus schools will become priority schools. We're not in the same game as the suburban schools, and I would like any of you to give parents advice in the city of what we can share with our fellow parents and teachers in the city of what we can talk about. Thank you.
I can't read to you all of the ramifications or lack of ramifications if you don't take the test, but I will direct you to a place that's very, very quick that you'll get those answers. I have the paper right in front of me, but it's a little too long to read. Go to fairtest.org and look under the section that says how NCLB relates to opting out of tests. And it specifically, point by point, debunks the myth of all of the damage that's going to happen to schools.
Can you say that?
Fairtest.org. And it's the section is how NCLB relates to opting out of tests.
All right, thank you. Thank you, that's for sure.
If you really want to see a very good example of damage that test and punish can do, look at all the urban centers in New York. And if you look at the privatization models that come in, just look at East High School.
Oh, you don't have to convince me, sir. My child isn't taking the test, and I'm telling parents nicely that it's a good idea not to.
But I just want people to understand that this whole concept is to test and punish.
Yeah.
And it's a privatization movement. And when the one private organization that came in and bid on East High School, their solution was to get rid of 800 kids. They were only going to educate 1,000 of the 1,800 kids. Why do you think they do that? And if you look at the other reform movement, like charter schools, they exclude kids regularly. It's the end result of test and punish. And one other thing, I'm sorry to get all worked up. There are people who say that this whole Common Core debacle is all about convincing suburban parents their schools are crappy. Because when No Child Left Behind came about, it was easy to look at urban schools that had horrendous poverty and terrible achievement results. Suburban parents didn't care. So when you drop scores 30%, and now suburban, you heard Arnie Duncan's comment, I won't repeat it, it was very offensive to soccer moms. That's the goal of all this, to create the illusion that American kids aren't competitive and American public education's failing. It's wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to play anymore. Do you?
All right, you have another question?
I'm back for my 7th grader in Pittsburgh. Has a 504 for anxiety disorder and OCD. Gets extremely anxious over these state tests. I left it up to her last year. She said to Mommy, she started having meltdowns when they sent the workbooks home. We haven't been taught this yet. I don't know how to do it. Do I have to take these tests? I said, no, you do not. That is your choice. I fully backed her. Again, same thing. Came home this year. Math, which she has an A+ in her best subject, she loves it. We haven't been taught this test. Do I have to take tests? No. My question is, kids are taking these tests in April. There's still 2 more months of instruction. I have friends and family that live in other states who also have state testing. They take the test in June when testing is finished. Instruction is finished. Who makes this decision to give tests when there's still 2 months left of instruction, and kids have not learned all of this stuff for the year.
Okay. Jody wants to take that. Go ahead.
That's the decision that's made at the State Education Department under the Board of Regents.
All right, thank you. Yes, your turn.
Hi, my name is Allison. I'm in the Webster School District, and I'm also an educator in the Rochester City School District. My question is about all of our vulnerable kids, our special ed kids, our English language learners, our city school kids that are in poverty. They're failing these tests, and we're taking services away from them, my son included, who has an IEP and is in 7th grade. Every year that he's been in school, I've seen more and more services taken away from him, to the point that he's actually in a private school now, and I would prefer him to be in a public school, but they don't have what he needs. What happens when these kids are ready for high school and they can't graduate? I mean, we're not talking about a small population of kids. We're talking about a huge population of kids who's going to go through the system, not get a diploma, and do what? I mean, we're saying, you know, eventually this will go away. What do we do with all of these kids that are in poverty, that are learning English, that have IEPs or special needs? What happens to them?
All right, does someone want to take that one? Bill, he's not shy. He'll take it.
Oh, I see no one. No one mic. You know, it's either John or it's I. Right? Yeah. It's a serious problem, and it's really the false narrative that's been set up, and it's all about, as Howard said, it's about test and punish. And unless we change the narrative, this is going to continue. And then also, I'll hitchhike on what John said, is that, you know, when they get into high school, they try to redirect the bus so it doesn't go off the cliff. But unfortunately, it's the road to the cliff that's damaging. It's kids who, like, you have to pull them into private school in order to get what you want.
So what do we do? I mean, what can we do right now? I mean, I've been writing, I've been calling, and I'm getting the same responses that you have. Nothing, or auto reply, or, oh, sorry, we didn't read it. You know, I mean, this seems like it's an emergency action kind of thing.
That's correct, it is.
Flo, you have some, excuse me.
No, it is emergency action time, and it's time where you basically have to fish or cut bait. What is the action we're going to take? There are actions that you can take, and I'm not going to suggest them. You know what they are, and you know it's time to make some moves, because just writing alone, I'm not saying stop the writing, but that alone hasn't worked so far.
Flo, did you want to add to that?
Well, I actually want to add, I don't really have an answer. I know that there's a small group of parents locally that are working towards legislation, hopefully. There's also a Facebook group that is dedicated to this. The problem with our segment of students is that I feel like they're kind of thinning the herd, and they are cutting services. When in fact, I believe, Jody, you went on saying that there's all those mandates for special education were just too much and costing too much money a few years ago, actually. Those cuts hurt. And, hold on, I'm not finished. Those cuts hurt. And the cuts that happen early on in the years when a child's brain can accept changes and make improvements is where the cuts are happening the most. I'll be polite, it's backwards. By infusing services in middle school and high school, it's too late for these kids. The services need to be infused in elementary school, and we need support from everybody on that. The special ed kids are constantly tossed aside on that. And that is a problem, because you know what? When they graduate with no diploma and a certificate of completion, guess whose responsibility that is? Look around. Look around. That's our responsibility. So do we want to help these kids and make these kids, you know, as best as they can be and be a part of society, or do we want to make them wards of the state?
Jody, did you want to add to that, and then we'll move on to the next one?
We've asked the State Education Department to look at mandates, which they really haven't done. I'm not sure what cuts you're seeing, but it's not in the mandates that we've highlighted, where we've talked about the fact that there could be more flexibility to allow student needs to be addressed more specifically, as opposed to in these rigid categories of layers of regulation. The issue of the lack of a diploma at the end is very, very serious, and it's something that we believe is a policy decision at the State Education Department and not a matter of law, and that they could come around and decide that, yes, a student who attends school should have a diploma. They really have trouble with the idea that all diplomas wouldn't tell exactly the same thing about everyone. And in fact, we know people are different. And I've watched the Board of Regents for 20 years try to discuss the possibility of a variation in the diploma that would recognize, a different skill set. And they have a lot of trouble with that, but it's still something that needs to be addressed. There is some legislation moving through the legislature that would direct the State Education Department to look at alternative diploma models.
All right, thank you, Jody. Did you want to add one thing or ask a question, Dr. Hirsch, really quickly?
Flo, you mentioned a parent organization, and you didn't get the name or how to contact them. We are collecting emails. I think we're collecting emails as people are coming in, because we need to do there has to be a parent organization. There has to be a way to get people together and organize and get stuff done. And if we got the Common Core right here. We got you as the core to get this started. Let's get that done and have them also hook up with what you're doing.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, did you want to say the parent group real quickly?
Well, we have a local group, parent to parent, that we work with, but there's also a Facebook group. I can look it up and get back to you.
All right, great.
Exact name.
Thank you. All right, excellent. Thank you for being so patient. We've got a lot more people and a lot more questions, so we're going to try to move through these as quickly as possible.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I have 3 children who attend school in the Rochester City School District. And when I say that, everyone kind of changes their hats and looks at things in a different way, because the issues surrounding test refusal in 2 miles down the road that way are completely different than what I can assume a majority of the people who are here concerned about. And refusals in the Rochester City School District are growing, so that is the good news. It is starting to catch on because parents are taking action and they are educating other parents, many times with the support of teachers who care about their students. What we're hearing parents say in the Rochester City School District is that, will this test hurt their teachers? Will it hurt our school? Will our principal be removed? And again, it's not that easy to just say, refuse the test. Because in the Rochester City School District, I don't want to be too dramatic, but it's like you have a gun to your head. I mean, this is so serious in our district. And so when we ask questions, we're told you have to have 95% participation, or else you don't pass your annual yearly progress when you're a focus school. We have 41 focus schools in the Rochester City School District. I'm going to say that again. 41 focus schools. Now, if you don't know what a focus school is, you can imagine it's probably not a school in good standing. Those focus schools are, in many cases, wonderful schools, but we have people operating in fear. We have administrators, board members, superintendents. People are afraid, and it's very divisive, and it really separates out. It makes the gap even larger between our suburban districts and our urban districts, this testing. So my question is, when parents say, is this going to hurt? I don't want my kids' teachers to lose their jobs. I don't want the principal to be removed. I don't want the school to close. What do I tell those parents?
School district, and I can tell you that almost all of the teachers that I know would love to have you refuse the test. Your child taking the test and failing the test, because it was, as I said, set up to fail them, is going to hurt me more than having your child refuse the test and score a 999. I am not graded on the children who refuse the test. I am graded on the children who take it and fail it. All right, so we want you to do that.
Then I'm going to ask everyone here, if you will stand with us in the Rochester City School District. If we have refusals and there are repercussions, I'm going to ask everyone here to stand with this urban district as much as we stand with
I just want to point something out quickly, though. I mean, and this, again, I'm just trying to provide some, balance here, because I don't want to give completely misleading information. In the budget that was just, analyzed by many different groups, but I am reading from a publication that the New York United Teachers put out. It is different for failing schools, and over time, the budget is set up to punish, failing schools and cause them to go into receivership. So I'm not an expert in this area, so I can't go on and on and on. I would have to read from this document for quite some time, but the stakes are higher. And if you're persistently failing school and you're failing repeatedly and repeatedly, you could go into receivership, meaning you could get taken over and you lose all control. So I mean, it's not like there aren't any stakes at all. But, I just want to be sure that we're putting all of the information out there so that you don't think, oh, there's like no consequences at all. There could be down the line if you're a persistently failing school. And it is different for a suburban school that's never been on the list compared to the Rochester City School District that has been on the list. And again, not because of the students or the parents or the teachers, but because of poverty, which, our government is not addressing.
We have
Excellent
no
point.
control now.
Thank you. No, I agree that you don't have any control now, but I just don't want to be so I want to be sure that people have all of the information so they don't just go in thinking that there's absolutely no consequences. There could be consequences for you down the road if you're a persistently failing school. And again, I think the important thing is that you do your own research and you make your decision, but you want to be sure that you have all the information just in case. You don't want to send people off thinking that there's no consequences, and I agree with that.
And I just want to add very quickly that there's no such thing as a failing school. There are schools out there that have teachers and students who struggle. They struggle mostly for reasons that have nothing to do with school. We need to stand with those schools and demand the state address the root cause of school failure, high concentrations of poverty, period. The correlation is 1-to-1. It's astonishing.
You've been so patient with me.
Failing based on what? Based on this test.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
Allison Fedek Featherly. I'm a third grader in the Webster School District. I do not work in education. I work in a technology company here in Rochester. Can you? Yes. Okay. Normally I don't have that problem. Here's my question. This isn't adding up to me. I don't even know if I have the right facts. I'm trying to connect the dots. I am hearing what just passed through legislation is that if a teacher does not perform well, I can't remember the ratings, for 2 to 3 years, they could lose their position. True or false? Okay. So bear with me. I'm going to go fast because I know other people have important questions. Here's the deal. I also heard tonight, which was news to me because I've always been told there's a surplus of people out there looking for teaching jobs, that it's decreased 75% for people or students going into education. Is that right?
Over the last several years, and I think that's probably a low figure.
Okay. So in 2 to 3 years, I'm also hearing through the grapevine, not facts, in the rumor mill, that recently a number of teachers that were very high performing prior to all this crap are now scoring relatively low and not performing well.
Okay.
A large number in different schools. So in 2 to 3 years is my third grader who has had amazing teachers. In fact, I would say the reason he's at grade level and above is because of his teachers and their willingness to work with me to help him learn in a way that he can. He's going to see this turnover of teachers, and now he's going to have all these brand new teachers, and God love them. They're trained. I'm sure they're great college students, but he's going to have all of these new teachers coming in, potentially, to his school. Is this realistic? Could this happen?
Well, that's a hypothetical, and that might be difficult to answer, but you have a question that might be feasibly answered right now?
How likely is this? Are we going to fire a large number of teachers in 2 to 3 years because they're not performing?
I think there's a question there, and let me tell you that in my experience, as 20 years as advocate for teachers. The biggest issue for teachers is that they're devastated when they go home at night. Most of them have families. They have families, and this is particularly true in grades K through 8, which is the most important. I've been teaching high school. I'm a coward. I don't have responsibility for 8-year-olds. That's really scary. If you think about it, you make a mistake with an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old, and you don't do a good job, and you're one person responsible for that child's development for a year as the teacher in charge. So those jobs, the toughest jobs in education, are teachers in classrooms in those key grades during the developmental, key years for children. And the biggest problem that we have in public education, in my opinion, is teachers going home saying, I want to help these kids, I love these kids, I need more time, I'm stressed, this is so difficult. They're away from their own families and trying to balance that. And so what happens is when you have this cascading effect of negativity, the villainization of teachers, it does become exhausting. I wasn't kidding when I said I'm looking forward to tomorrow, teaching tomorrow after all these years. And so do every one of these teachers I'm describing. But your question is the key question. How are we going to have a high-quality teaching core when we're moving to a dispensable model where we're going to McDonaldify this profession so there won't be people who hang around like I have or Bill Calla has or Howie did or everybody up here basically to have a career, to develop their skills over a career. And we invest so much money in teachers. And then we basically, if we make them disposable, their skills get to a key level, and this is what you're talking about with your teachers over in Webster, right? So we have to start thinking about keeping teachers in this country, is supporting them, encouraging them, saying to them, we value you, we know this job is difficult, and I think we got to change the narrative to that from what we've had lately.
I have to tell you, in corporate America, I'm seeing more investment in their employees than I'm seeing here with teachers. And that is when we have people who have been in the workforce for 10 years, we need to update their technology skills. We bring in training. We train them. We help them get to the next level. We set the goals and we go. I don't understand why that's not happening here.
All right. Thank you. I'm married to a teacher, by the way, for the record. I hear this every night at dinner. Yes.
Hi, I'm an educator in the Pittsburgh district and very proud to be one. We have an amazing leader, and we are, we benefit from how active she is, and I feel like we get really good current information. I am also a parent of 2 children in the Geneseo district who will be opting out of the tests, and it was a very hard decision for me to make. For all the reasons that were spoke of tonight, I would recommend parents go to the website that Bill mentioned, just to kind of sort through, is it going to hurt the teachers, is it going to hurt the district, etc. My real question is, I've been in this from the beginning. I feel like I've been, one of the outspoken, vocal ones at all the rallies, etc. And I still get conflicting messages. You get a letter on Facebook from one superintendent to their district, and then the next superintendent says something totally different. And I guess, Bill, you'd be the best maybe to address this, because I'm assuming you sit...
I'm right.
You're sitting, I'm assuming, on the panel with other superintendents. And do you see in the near future the superintendents and the administrators standing up and not worrying about what happens from the state, what the repercussions are? Because I feel like, the parents, this has been awesome, and, we can fight the fight, but they're superintendents that, there's no continuity among the superintendents, and if our higher-ups aren't leading the fight for us, it's very frustrating. So do you get a sense that at some point everyone, the superintendents are going to stand up together like you have? school district, and we maybe this year won't be, you know, in as much trouble if things, you know, go awry like the city schools, and they still aren't standing up.
I think a big reason why a lot of school leaders don't do things somewhat differently is that, you know, educators as a rule, and that includes school leaders of all types, are good soldiers. And when they're told something by an authority figure, they take it on face value. And that's gone on too long. I've never been that way. And I think good education is teaching your children to ask why. Always in a classroom, you ask why. And I think John can attest to this. Whenever I talk to our faculty, I say faculty should always ask the question why when they're being told to do something. If we don't have a good answer why we're doing something, then I think we have a problem. I do see now, I think, a sparkle of hope. 18 out of the 19 superintendents wrote a letter to the regents, and it was a pretty unified letter from a group that normally can't agree on lunch. So I thought that was an encouraging sign. So I think everyone has reached their tolerance, and I think that trend is moving.
Thank you, Bill. Hope you got your question answered. We'll move over here.
My name is Ann, and I feel like I'm coming from left field. I'm going to try to be brief. First of all, I'm going to admit that I live in the city, and I am not one of those people who has my children attend the city school district, so please don't attack me. We were fortunate enough to have our kids in private school. Right now they're in parochial. So we came upon Common Core when it was implemented because the parochial schools are implementing it. And once it hit, it became a huge issue for me. And I guess my question, I'm just going to make it brief. We've had a great experience for our kids in the school, all right? But once it hit and affected my son greatly, it's become a huge issue for me, and I've tried to convey it. What I want to know from you is the diocese involved at all? Is that superintendent coming to any of this? I just feel like they're saying we're going to create our new curriculum now, but we believe we have to give the test because we want our schools to be compared against other schools in the area.
Is that answerable? I don't know.
Does anyone see where the diocese fits in here? Has anyone heard or seen anything?
That might be a difficult question to answer.
The diocese is not part of the county superintendent's council.
Okay, so they don't have any interest in it. So we are definitely out in left field.
Okay. Thank you for asking. I'm sure it was something on everyone's mind as well.
Well, attached to that, though, are privates, okay? And McQuaid doesn't use it. Aquinas, as you notice, is just pulling out of Common Core. Allendale, Columbia, their motto is their
the cure for the Common Core.
So if this were the way to go, these private schools that cost a lot of money would be doing it if the right thing to do.
Right.
All right, thank you. We only have a few minutes remaining, so we're really going to try to ask very succinct questions and get through this.
My name's Jeannie Petrosky. I live in Williamson, and I have a third grader. I'm a veteran teacher of 17 years, able to be at home. And I've been researching this for many, many years, or well, for probably 2 years, knowing my daughter was going to come up to this. She's an honors student, and I do not agree with this testing at all. To the gentleman who brought up the pawn as your child, I talked to my daughter, because I feel strongly against this, and said, you know, this is what I think we should do. And she says, I'm going to be pushed into these special classes, Mom, if I don't get to take this test. And I said, no, this is not the way it is. I said, I talked about her teacher, and she loves her teacher, and how these grades are going to affect her teacher. And she may do okay, because she's a good student, but for her peers who may be okay or not okay, this test is not going to make it for them. So we're going to stand together for those students, for our teachers, and for our schools, and she's going to proudly refuse this test. The Rosa Parks was brought up. That's exactly what I felt when I walked out of that principal's office.
Right.
We need to stand up for it. So I
You
don't
have a question, a statement. All right, we're going to try to stick to the questions. I appreciate that, though, because I know a lot of people do have questions. Sir?
Would you comment on what I think is a driving motive behind all this, and that's profit, privatization, and Pearson?
There's actually really nothing else to say, but I'm sure someone else, you hit the nail on the head.
Does anyone on the panel disagree with that statement, perhaps? No. All right, well.
I would like you to elaborate because there are a lot of people here tonight who are not aware of, if you could just explain briefly what the gentleman precisely said.
Okay, so let me give you, it's so big, it's mind-numbing. Cuomo got 1.6, and this is all related to the profit margin, okay? Cuomo got $1.6 million from charter supporters for his campaign. He got $4.8 million from hedge funds in order, which support charters. And the hedge funders, why are hedge funders, why are they interested in charters? It's all about money. There was a law passed in 2000, and that law enables the hedge funders to have a 39% tax credit, not deduction, credit, meaning that in 7 years they double their money. That's why Cuomo was so strong on trying to raise the cap on charters. You raise the cap on charters and you have more investment opportunities. So we're almost at the cap for charters right now. And by the way, I will point out, don't think that's dead. That was not in the bill. That piece was not in the bill, but they have until June in order to pass that. And the word out on the street is they're going to do everything they can to pass the tax credit and lift the charters, the charter cap.
All right, is that sufficient? Okay, one quick thing I'd like to get this lady.
He was asking about Pearson, and Pearson is the company that owns all of the material that our students are using. They own all the testing, they own the GED, they own the rights to pretty much everything that we're getting. So our kids are getting a very, one-sided, sloppy curriculum, which is being written as they go. When New York State signed the Memorandum of Understanding, the curriculum wasn't even written yet. And it's been written, and it's riddled with errors and just ridiculous oversights that are being used. And they also have the contract to do the testing, which is, what, $35 million? That's now been extended indefinitely, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
They also own all textbooks too.
And almost all the standardized testing around the world, including now PISA.
Right. And the teacher certification test at TPA, they also own that.
All right, you've been very patiently waiting. Thank you.
My name is Aisha. I'm a parent and I teach as well. And my question actually, the guy before me kind of took my question in a way, but I want to make one comment. I keep hearing they were talking about poverty and the concentrated poverty, and there's that direct, but it's not, because you can be poor and our children are just fine. It's really a single parent or two-parent home, and the parent involvement is the direct correlation versus poverty. Because as someone who's in that position, our poverty has nothing to do with how well our children do. It's how involved we are with our kids. But with that said, my question, I guess, would be, I hear so many of the teachers who are upset, the superintendents, all of these people, and is there going to be, and again, the other lady had kind of mentioned it, is there going to be some kind of movement where those people that are on the top tier, I don't see any other board members here or politicians. I think Anthony and Daniele might be here. But there's nobody else here. So when are all of these people, all of these points going to come together where the teachers say, not only am I not going to maybe give the test, or, I don't know what they can do, but when is that going to be the part where they come alongside us parents and say, okay, you know, I appreciate, what was her name, Teddy? I appreciate Teddy, she's, you know, when she said that it doesn't matter how it's going to affect us as teachers, you have to do what's right for your children. But it would be really nice as parents to see the superintendents, to see all those people out in front and everybody coming together and say that we have some support as we're trying to do the right thing as well, because I don't think anybody necessarily wants to be a rabble-rouser, but is that going to happen? Are, you know, those, everybody gonna say, you know what, we don't care if we lose funding. We're just gonna do what's right.
Jody, put up her hand.
I really appreciate what you're saying, and I learned a long time ago that, you know, people learn things when they start paying attention to an issue. When the state signed up for Race to the Top, which required that they adopt the Common Core Learning Standards, back in, these activities took place in 2009, 2010. That's when people who were education leaders in the state started having a conversation with the state education department and with their legislators about what they had done, about all the unintended consequences, about what we saw as just a storm coming towards us of difficulty that wasn't based in research and wasn't going to improve education. And that conversation has been going on constantly for the last 4 to 5 years without, and it's only recently that it has somehow started percolating out.
But if we were gonna take a nickel from a paycheck, everybody would be standing up and saying something, and I'm just wondering, again, I don't wanna be, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just wondering, you know, that sounds good, but, you know, we need the support as well. I mean, again, we come to all of these meetings, we do all of these things, and we're trying to say, okay, we wanna help support our teachers, because I think teachers are great, I teach as well, but, you know, again, if we were gonna take a nickel from a teacher's paycheck, there'd be a lot more uproar from the teachers, I think.
No, the solution to the problem, you know, everyone is always looking for someone else to solve the problem. The people on this panel aren't going to solve this problem.
Absolutely.
You're going to solve the problem. Everyone sitting there is going to solve the problem. What we have to do every morning is look in the mirror and say, what am I going to do today to make this better? That's what we have to do. No one else is going to do it for us. I have been over the years, and people that know me, I've fought standardized testing for 20 years, and I've been in so many of these meetings, and I say, look, all I'm asking you to do as an individual is to write a letter. I'd get out, and no one would write letters. You know, they vented, they had a good time, they got everything off their chest. Everyone has to do something themselves. I don't know about you, but every day, there's something that I say I have to do today in order to try to change this. Even if it's you write 1 letter a day. And it's so easy now. It's not like it used to be where you had to put a piece of paper on a typewriter. You just have to copy an email address and pop it in. I wrote last night a letter to every assemblyman and every senator. It took me 5 minutes. If you can't take 5 minutes, we're not going to solve it for you.
All right. At this point, I'm going to duck out, go to the news. This might be on the news tonight. I think it's a good starting point for one of our stories. I want to thank you and thank all the panelists for being patient with me and having to be abrupt at times. I was really trying to be mindful of the time allowed so all of you could get your questions in. There may be more time, but I want to thank you all. I think there's a lot of hope because you're in this room tonight. We've got a lot of people that care in our community, and that's a very good sign. Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Ginny. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come out tonight to hear the facts and truth. I have a quick question to ask, and it was brought to our attention. One of the questions that was just asked is about our legislators and being present here tonight. They all were invited here tonight. And I guess my next question is, are there any legislators sitting in our audience? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, we received 1 response. And the 1 response was from Rich Funke's office stating that he was unavailable and that they would not be sending a representative. We received that today. 1 response. So parents, I think that's a true sign of what kind of work we have ahead of us. Well, according to John, thanks John, I'm speaking for 100 teachers right now. No pressure. Good evening, and thank you all for making the time to come out tonight for your children. Wow. Looking around and seeing how many people are here tonight only proves to us that there was a need for parents to be honestly informed about the changes in public education. Thank you, panel members, Jenny Ryan, Mario's, CMI Communications, Blackhawk Academy Security. I'm glad we didn't need you tonight. And the video guy, Eric Johnson, for all your support, time, and generosity. They donated everything here tonight for you parents. So thank you. For the past 3 years, a few of us have questioned administrators for facts and truths on Common Core and New York State testing. The consistent message from our administration is, quote, things will be okay. Common Core will not last. New York State testing will work itself out. Well, here we are. April 1st, a budget was passed. Everything I was told now seems not true. Feeling defeated, I hesitantly went to a meeting with other concerned moms regarding Common Core and New York State testing. There, I met a group of women who conveyed the same concerns. After talking for 2 hours with these moms, many were enlightened and shocked from my research and experience.